Hey, good afternoon. This is Shelley, and on this afternoon's video, I'm going to walk you through briefly the creation of two frequency distributions and the correlating histograms for a set of data provided. So I will first share my screen with you, and we will take a look at this screen first. So to briefly walk you through what was done, I had a data set of approximately 14,000 lines that provided information such as local ID, gender, grade, ethnicity, race, student name, campus, and attendance information. I set out to clean up the data a little bit so you can see if I'm working with ethnicity and race and attendance, I really don't need students' names. So I have omitted that from my data. So we have some nice clean data to work with now. So you'll see what's left is local ID, student gender, grade level, ethnicity or race, which is the focus of this particular graph, a campus ID, reporting periods for which students were enrolled in school, total eligible days present, and total days of membership. So what that means is how many days the student was present, enrolled in relation to the total number of days in the school year. So, excuse me, for this student, you can see they were present 158 days out of 170-day school year. And by looking at the reporting period, you can also see that they were enrolled all 6 reporting periods. So moving over within this spreadsheet, I set out to identify ethnicity and race. And I focused on Hispanic students and how many days they were present. So using my formulas, I ran my minimum and my maximum. Obviously, they could be present 0 days, and they could be present every day, which would be 170. So then we set up the scale to categorize days present. You can see 0 through 30, 31 through 60, 61 through 90, 91 through 120, etc. And next to this, I created a bin, which is essentially the dumping ground or the higher end of where the data set will fall. And then I went up to my data tab and analyzed my data by creating a histogram. So you will see that it created this little frequency distribution chart for me, which has our bin or our upper outer limits, and then the frequency of, these would be students present over a particular number of days. So after we create this, let's look at our histogram. The first thing I did was go in and retitle it. So this is now called Histogram Eligible Days Present Hispanic Students. So what this histogram does is it looks at the data set from this entire district and focuses on the Hispanic students. You'll see the y-axis shows the number of Hispanic students enrolled. It's in increments of 1,000 students. And the bottom shows the number of days present in increments of 180 days. So this creates a bar graph, and then we go in and convert it to a histogram, which simply means that all of the bars are touching. From here, we could go in and do some nifty little tricks, such as adding specific numbers to the top, or we could put in grid lines. And you can see basically by going through all of your tabs at the top, this would give you different abilities to format your tables, your cells, change your colors, add your grid lines, add your specific numbers. But this gives you a generalized idea of how this histogram was created. Before we move on to the next chart or the next histogram created, I wanted to quickly show you something. The original data set had ethnicity and race listed as things such as Hispanic or white or African American, 2 or more races, but that is labeling with words, which is qualitative data. And we can't really run a histogram or quantify things with qualitative data. So what you do is you go in and open a new sheet and create a code book. And then I simply copied and pasted all of the different ethnicities that were here and assigned them a number. These are simply nominal numbers. They have no value. They can't be ranked. There's no particular interval in between a white person or a person with 2 or more races. It's just a way to qualify the data so we can work with it. So after I created this code book, I went back in and did the find and replace and went through and added corresponding codes. You can scroll all the way down through this data set and see that there are absolutely none missing viable value to it. So that is how this histogram for days present Hispanic students for this particular district was created. Next, we're going to minimize this one. And I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute so I can find the other one that I need and want to discuss with you. And here it is. So now I need to go back in and share my screen with you. And wait for it to come back up. All right, so now I'm sharing with you the second data set that I worked with. Basically, it's the same process. We took data from the original data set and copied it onto this new sheet. And you can see there are heading IDs up here, which tells you what you're looking at. Local ID. As you can see, this looks like a formula, but if we were to expand the columns a little bit, you can see there are actual ID numbers, student gender, what grade level they're in, ethnicity and race. And again, the original data had quantifiable labels, qualitative labels rather, sorry. And we went in and put quantitative values to them. Here are the specific campuses and their campus IDs. I could leave it fully out like that, or I can minimize it to where you just see the campus number. Being able to adjust the widths of these columns makes it easier to work with. Now you see the reporting period, just as in the last data set. This is the number of periods that students were enrolled. As are here are their eligible days present and the total days of membership. So again, we can adjust and go through. And I'm going to adjust this one for just a minute to show you that if you scroll down the data, you're going to see that these have been organized, or I sorted them by schools. And for the focus of this histogram, I'm focused on this very first high school, otherwise known as 999-001-001. So I'm going to come back up to the top of my data set and scan across my page here. And I'll show you that this is my focus, the campus we just talked about. And then we set the minimum and maximum ranges for the ethnicity and race codes. And this was formatted just like the previous code book I showed you on the last sheet. So each particular ethnicity has a code. It's nominal, can be ordered. It doesn't have an interval. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't rank any one higher than the other. It just gives us some numbers to work with. And so here, then I set my bin. And what I did was, since my ethnicity codes went from 1 to 7, I set my bins equally the same. I went up to my data tab. Then I started analyzing data. What I wanted to do was to create a histogram. So I selected that. And you will see it creates this frequency distribution table, which has the bins, so they're the same as this. And then it has the frequency of occurrences. So for instance, let's take this one. This category 1 was for Hispanic students. And you will see that there's a total of 1,010. So how this differs from the last histogram I created, you'll see it has a title, and I simply called this ethnicity histogram for school 999-001-001. It creates a bar graph. We go in and select the type we want, which changes it to a true histograph, which means that all the categories are touching and there's no space in between. Your y-axis is labeled the number of students enrolled. Your x-axis is labeled ethnicity or race code, which matches up with the data set back here at the beginning of the spreadsheet. So this looks a little different because after I ran the histogram, you could see the bars, but you see that there are so few almost outliers in population that I went through and labeled the top of it so you could have a more specific view. Because when we get down to here with codes 5, 6, and 7, you can't really tell how many there are. It looks like there's just a fraction over 0, just a fraction under 200, but we can't be specific. So by labeling these bars, you can see that there are 1,010. Category 2 has 611, and you can come down here to category 7 and you can see that there are 4. Again, you are able to go through here and use options to change the form of your graph, the labels. You can put in grid lines, you can change the colors of bars, you can set up legends, which if you were presenting this to the general public, it would be great to have a legend so they know what these particular ethnicity categories are and what they're looking at in terms of data. So to go through and going very back to the beginning, to get these sheets copied from one to another, you're able to use this AbleBits data tool at the top. And as you can see, AbleBits allows you the ability to merge tables, to combine sheets, you can consolidate data, you can copy sheets and merge cells. And it's just a good way to manage your data so that you're not doing all the cutting and pasting and manual labor when there's a program that'll do it for you. So this was a brief overview. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you were able to get a little something out of it. And just a quick few steps as to how I created frequency distribution charts and the correlating histograms. Thanks for joining. See you next time.